Let's go live now to Professor Javed Ali from the University of Michigan, an expert in domestic terrorism, former senior director at the National Security Council. Javed, thanks for your time. What we saw there, and we heard in Trudy's report, a bipartisan grilling of the Secret Service director. You would have to think that was inevitable after the failure in Pennsylvania a bit over a week ago now.
So Karen, thanks for having me on. And yes, the hearing today unified Congress on this issue, because anytime there is an incident that occurred now going back a week, Congress is going to demand answers as to why that happened. Now, having briefed members of Congress frequently in my own career, there's a bit of political theater that goes on with this too. Certainly in these public hearings, most of my hearings were behind closed doors, but still, they're all trying to make points either to get to the heart of the issue substantively, or just to look good from a political perspective. And so each member probably had a different calculus when they were giving their positions and launching their questions today.
And you were with the Department of Homeland Security as well as the FBI. You know the sort of mechanisms in place to protect the president. How could such a failure happen in what seems such a glaring hole in the security around that field in Pennsylvania, a rooftop 150 metres away?
So now, based on all the facts that have come out over these past 9 to 10 days, the way I look at this is that there as a series of interconnected sort of failures or breakdowns that happened. There's a strategic layer to this that needs to be looked at. There's the operational piece that went into the planning, probably the weeks of planning even before the event happened. And then there's the tactical part, which clearly there were breakdowns because that's what allowed Crooks to fire off as many shots that he did. And he killed one person and he wounded a second, and he wounded President Trump as well. That a whole series of tactical errors were made. So no matter how you look at this from those three dimensions I just described, there are things that have to be fixed, which may even include sort of pulling more Secret Service personnel and agents off other missions that they're engaged in right now, and solely making the Secret Service's main job about protection. And there's 36 current individuals in the executive branch and now I think Supreme Court that get Secret Service protection. So this is a huge challenge for the Secret Service. It's not a large organization, unlike the FBI, where I worked, and other parts of DHS. So the Secret Service is going to have to figure this out and make some really tough choices about what it needs to do to prevent this from ever happening again.
Do you believe the director is on borrowed time now, given that failure?
Well, this is going to be an interesting thing to watch. At the director level of these departments and agencies, they are presidentially appointed, and I also believe that the Secret Service director has to go through Senate confirmation. So the Senate alone cannot force a cabinet level officer or someone who's presidentially appointed. The Secret Service director is not a cabinet officer, but even presidentially appointed member of government to leave. But the president, they all serve at the pleasure of the president. And if the president, no matter who that president is, wants that person's resignation, they can demand it. So in this case, the director may be asked to resign by the president, or based on her own calculus, she could resign without that hand being played too. But it would be interesting if she holds on to the position for the next several months. I mean, there's just so much pressure on her, as today's hearings showed.
Indeed. And just finally, this is something we've reflected on from afar in the wake of that event. It's been a huge time politically. There's a new Democratic nominee by the looks of things now, all but certain. But if that bullet had killed the former president, the security, the nation, your democracy, how do you contemplate what would have been? You shudder at the thought of the violence that would have unfolded, don't you?
I mean, there's so many different scenarios that could have played out if things had gotten even worse. And thankfully, they didn't, at least for President Trump. But again, somebody else died tragically last Saturday. So, as part of the after action process that's been going on, I would have to assume that the Secret Service is relooking the protective posture for the 36 people that they have primary protection for, trying to figure out what more capabilities do they need to add to enhance the current protection. How much more help do they need from other federal law enforcement agencies like the FBI, and even more so once you get out of Washington D.C. with state and local law enforcement and homeland security partners on the ground in all these different locations throughout the U.S. Are there technical capabilities the Secret Service isn't employing now that might? I've raised the notion of perhaps adding more of a drone or unmanned aircraft surveillance capability to these at least outdoor events, if we're going to continue to have outdoor events, to have a better three-dimensional picture of what's going on. So there's lots of things that are going to have to be re-examined to make sure security is very, very tight going forward.